Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. So this Tea Talk is discussing being Black in academia. And so for people that are new to this, I am Amber Jackson. I'm the owner of the Black Leaf Tea and Culture Shop. So it's a loose leaf tea company, and I also use this platform to engage community and celebrate Black culture. So Tea Talks are a platform I created for African American millennials to come and share their opinions and also educate the viewers and also themselves as well. It's a space you can also challenge the viewers' ideals and also their own. And so this one I'm excited to do because I also work at a college campus. But just to start, I want to introduce our panelists. I'll start with the ladies first. So Janelle Jones is a third-year doctoral student in a counselor education program where she has taught several courses including career counseling, advanced counseling practices, and lifespan development, and provided clinical supervision to master students. Janelle is an NBCC fellow and serves as the chair for professional development for the Association for Adult Development and Aging. Her research interests include multiculturally competent supervision, gerontological counseling, and race-based trauma. So thank you for being here, Janelle. Next, we have Dr. Brandon R. Davis. He's an assistant professor of law and society at the School of Political Affairs and Administration at the University of Kansas and a former postdoctoral research associate at Brown University. He earned his MSW from Alabama A&M University and an MA in Women's Studies and a PhD in Political Science from the University of Alabama. His research focuses on law and society, American politics, and race and ethnicity. Brandon is interested in normative and empirical approaches to institution, representation, and criminal justice. So thank you, Brandon, for being here. Let these people in. Cool. Next, we have Professor Chris Berry. He is an actor, director, professor, and dialect coach. He received his BFA in acting from North Carolina A&T and his MFA in acting from Brown University Trinity Rep. He serves as the president-elect of the Black Theater Network. As the vice president of the Black Theater Network, he has planned 2 national conferences, Black Theater Unapologetically Black in Winston-Salem in 2019, and Black Theater Radical Longevity in 2020, which has been postponed until 2022. He has also planned the Black Theater Network's online event, Black Theater Week. Prior to becoming an acting director of education, he served as the program director of the Black Arts Institute, a partnership between the Billie Holiday Theater and Stella Adler Studio of Acting. He also serves as an assistant professor of acting and stage voice at UNC Charlotte. His dialect coaching work includes P-Valley on Stars, which is my show. Thank you. Also, The Halloween King at the Signature Theater off-Broadway, Heels, which is in pre-production with Stars. As an actor, he has had the pleasure to work at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, Playmakers Repertory Company, the National Black Theater, Trinity Repertory Company, as well as many others. So thank you, Chris, for being here. And last but not least, we have Dr. Jonathan E. Collins. He's an assistant professor of education and political science by courtesy at Brown University. Prior to his current appointment, he was a Brown University Presidential Diversity Postdoctoral Fellow, as well as a non-residential democracy fellow at the Harvard University Kennedy School of Government's Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation. His research focuses on racial and ethnic politics, state and local politics, the politics of education, and questions of democracy. He currently holds research affiliations with the Brown University Tubman Center for American Politics and Policy, the Brown University Annenberg Institute for School Reform, the National Research Firm, African American Research Collaborative. His research has been published in numerous academic journals, including Political Behavior, Politics, Groups, and Identities, the Urban Affairs Review, the Journal of Urban Affairs, Local Government Studies, and the Harvard Journal of African American Policy. He is currently working on a book manuscript tentatively titled Democracy Speaks, Rethinking Local Governance, which uncovers the importance of democratic deliberation and minority empowerment to improve public education in the United States. His public commentary has appeared in the Washington Post, the Providence Journal, and Education Week, and the Brown Daily Herald. He holds a BA in English from Morehouse College, as well as both an MA in African American Studies, and a PhD in Political Science from UCLA. So thank you, Jonathan Collins, for being here. Make sure everybody's in. Cool. So I first want to start by asking you guys, what was it that made you pursue a PhD or continue your career in academia? Because a lot of people, especially that I know, they get their advanced degrees and they move on to a corporation base or a private company. So what was it that made you feel like this was a space for you to continue on in academia? And that's for anyone to answer first.
I'll go ahead and get it started, I guess. For me, it was the autonomy. I remember when I was an undergrad and I had my advisor reached out to me and asked me about going into academia, like, and joining this research fellowship program to really start thinking about becoming a professor. And, the whole conversation started with my own interests, what I wanted to do, what I was curious about, what I was interested in. And she promised me that if I stayed in academia, that if I took this path, everything would kind of boil down to the research questions that I wanted to ask. Just that autonomy, that freedom that comes along with being an academic. Along the way, you figure out the constraints. It's not quite as free as it seems. But there is still always this kind of feeling of, I'm sort of in control of what I'm studying. And essentially on the day-to-day, you feel like you're your own boss. So, if you're a person who doesn't really like to take orders and be bossed around by other people, that's another thing that makes academia a really special place.
Yeah, for me, it was definitely the idea of righting a wrong in regards to actor training, in regards to representation, in regards to actor training, and like dismantling some misnomers in regards to Black acting methods and Black actors going through the academic process. When I was in undergrad, getting a BFA was fine, but there were certain limits that our programs had in regards to accessibility, reach out into the professional world. So I understood an MFA would allow me some bit of reach, especially at a high-end conservatory program. But definitely why I went into academia was some of that freedom and that allowing to really explore and have like a check and balance of, am I teaching what I'm actually doing in the world, and am I actually preparing artists for what's actually the climate out there, and really to give students ownership in ways that I feel like many students leave undergraduate programs not having, and ownership of like who they are as an artist and who they are, especially when they approach the world, and not necessarily look for validation from external sources, but really learn to discover that within themselves.
For me, my path wasn't so straightforward. None of my degrees match. So I kind of did an undergrad, then I got a job as a social worker. I started doing something else. I went back and got an MSW, and that kind of pushed me into getting a PhD, and ended up pushing me into getting a PhD in political science, just for different reasons. But I think I like school. I like learning. I'm a news junkie. I like politics. And I thought, this is something where I can just, immerse myself in things I like. And I can do things I like. And I think that, the draw for me is, and it's probably gonna be kind of weird to say this, but the draw for me is the competitiveness. I go to work every day, and I leave happy every day, but I'm working, I feel like competing against myself to a certain extent, because I want to get in certain journals. I want to be able to, be, published in these certain journals. I want to be able to, to be in these spaces too, to like have conversations in these spaces too. And I think that competitiveness is what really pushes me in academia, because I like, I like the challenge. Most of the top journals take probably 1-2% of what they get, and I want to be in that 1-2%. And this kind of competitiveness is just against yourself, so you ain't got nobody else, trying to push you. So if you have this kind of thing within yourself, you can be successful, because it's really just you and your laptop, or you and your desktop going to work.
So for me, I always knew I was going to get a doctorate. I just didn't know in what, because my mom was getting her doctorate when my brother and I were younger. So it was kind of an expectation. Like undergrad was more of a, high school type of thing, like it's expected. And then everything else, every degree beyond that was like, okay, keep going, right? And so in my family, we have 7 individuals that have doctorates. So now it's kind of like a club where we're all trying to get there and encourage the younger generation to keep going to school. But when I was in my master's program, I realized I didn't have a single Black professor teaching me. And so I was like, well, representation matters. So how can I be that for students? How can I be that advisor, that professor to come into classes and talk about diversity and equity, and also be present and have my presence in and of itself showcase that. And then additionally, I'm very much so into gerontological counseling, which there is minimal research on. And I realized, well, here I am realizing all these gaps in this research. And if I can't directly work with this population through clinical work, I can do research and have a meta impact and hope that my research can influence the ways that counselors are working with older adults, specifically Black older adults. So that's why I decided to go on and get my degree in counselor education.
Awesome, thank you. And actually, you actually touched on something that was a part of the next question, was your representation and your experiences. Because I know for me, similar, like I'm from Southside Chicago, so growing up, my professors, well, not professors, my teachers were always Black because I grew up in a Black neighborhood, and that's who was around me. Like every morning we did the national anthem, and we did Lift Every Voice and Sing every single morning. That's just the space I grew up around. But then going to college, I went to a PWI for undergrad and HBC for grad school. Undergrad, I had 2 Black professors, and in grad school, I had 1 at an HBCU as a STEM major. And secondly, remembering how I felt as a student, not having teachers that related to me, that showed genuine care for me as a Black student. And also thinking, okay, if I feel this as a student with no Black teachers, I'm gonna imagine like how they feel as professors being on this campus as one of few Black professors at the, well, for me, for undergrad, at the largest institution in the state at that time. So what is the experience in your own departments on your campus as far as representation and the support that you've seen so far from your campus?
It's lacking. And it's interesting that you asked that question in this time, because I feel many universities are doing this grand pivot to disassociate themselves from the guilt and the things that they've been complicit in regards to systemic oppression. And so I find that there's a lot of, there's not much representation at the moment. And the mirror is being placed back in front of the administration. But I find that in our department, we have, in our performance faculty, there's another Black female professor and a Latinx professor in performance. So that's pretty astronomical in our in regards to our larger College of Arts and Architecture. So there is representation, but it isn't indicative of the demographics of the students or the city.
Well, I'm the only, currently I'm the only African American in the School of Public Affairs and Administration. But however, you know, Kansas is 6% Black. So the campus itself is sparse with Black people because, you know, it's just not a lot in the Midwest. And I think in my graduate school experience, I had a unique experience at Alabama because at the time I was there were 4 Black men in my PhD program. Now, like, you know, but, you know, 2 of us is finished. 1 is still trying to finish. Another left because of stuff. It wasn't because of the program. It was because of him. He had to go somewhere else. We had 2 Black women that like right behind each other. So at Bama, we had a lot of, you know, Black graduate students. We didn't have a lot of, we had like probably 3 Black faculty at Bama at one time. I think it's 2 now. But I was also in the Gender and Race Studies department. And so that department was a little more diverse. And that is really kind of like where I made my community, was through the Gender and Race Studies department. We all hung out because we all took the same classes for that master's program. But just to talk about, you know, just the importance of representation in what we do. I think, I mean, I wouldn't never went to graduate school if it wasn't for the only Black professor I had in undergraduate, which was Dr. Askari Hudari, which really like, you know, kicked me in the butt, you know, and, you know, and she really, you know, kind of like called me to task for, you know, half-assing. And so she was really one of the catalysts that like pushed me into going to graduate school. But, you know, that's just the importance of having like, you know, somebody that looks like you in the department. And, you know, and also, you know, the flip side, the burden of being the only one in the department, right? So you get, all the kids come to you, and like, you know, maybe people out of the department come to you because, you know, you're the only one around.
So you bring up a good point with that, and people going to the Black faculty in the department. So I have two in my program. When I came into the program, there were two, one left, and then they hired another Black faculty member. And interestingly enough, the Black faculty member that they hired, she and I worked together at a counseling center. So she was my colleague, and then it's like, oh, now you're teaching me, let me act right in class, but okay. So we have two in our program, but in our department itself, we have 5. And I had the unique experience of being a grad assistant for the Black Faculty and Staff Association at our university. So I got a lot of exposure to Black faculty across campus, various programs and departments. So I know like Black professors in engineering, Black professors in poli-sci. So that's been great to be able to like interact with them and experience them. However, I will say, and this is a sentiment that me and a lot of other Black grad students share, we know the colloquial phrase of like, not all skin folk are kinfolk, right? And so not all Black faculty, we don't feel comfortable going to all Black faculty simply because they're Black. And unfortunately, some dissociate themselves from their Blackness intentionally in order to not have Black students come to them or to not be pigeonholed as that diversity person within their department.
The question, do you see that very often where you have some professor that they pick and choose when they want to use their Blackness to, like, on campus or within their department?
I've seen it occur a couple of times. And honestly, I think for them, it may be an attempt of survival and navigating through their department. We don't know what expectations they have on them or what they're needing to do for tenure and promotion. So I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but then also as a student, I'm like, now, you know, you got to show up for the Black students. Come on now, be better, do better. So, you know.
So is there a general sense of responsibility as a Black faculty member that I need to show up for my Black students?
Yeah, and oftentimes it's I hear you about that situations on campus, and I find that so many people feel scorned because often people are withheld from tenure because they are used as service institutions at their university for Black students, and they use that as a means to say you didn't publish enough or you didn't do this enough. It's only service. So consequently, you'll find a lot of people really negotiating how they behave with their students because they're ensuring their longevity based upon how they've been burned in the past. So there's so many stories about the blocking of Black faculty getting tenure and promotion. And one of the ways that it happens is focusing on them as only doing service and also expecting the service for the students because they're often hired because of a lack. And even though they bring a tremendous amount of expertise, there's a level of expectation that they will also serve as a representative for those students, and that will then consequently be used against them in the tenure and promotion process, which can have a really, really harsh impact on a lot of faculty as they navigate the field. I've just seen that personally happen.
There's a lot of pressure because you have the expectation of, you know, doing additional service for Black students. I think what doesn't get spoken about enough is how it's not just the Black students who come to Black faculty. It's the well-meaning white kids who want to know how to help Black folks and like how to be down with the movement and be in solidarity. It's the Latinx kids that feel like they relate to you on a different level of just being a person who's of a marginalized identity navigating this space. I mean, like everybody, you know, comes to Black faculty members and not just Black students. And, you know, our experiences, the kind of experiences that we have that lead us into the academy, you know, really wanting to be a transformative presence, it becomes difficult to say no to a lot of folks who are reaching out to you. So, you know, I know before I started the job, I got all this advice from mentors, like say no and say no to this, say no to that. Don't be afraid to say no. And that's easy to say, but then when you see the faces of kids who are looking to you for whether it's some sort of advice, some sort of mentorship, some sort of opportunity, and you can see yourself in them, it's difficult to walk away from that. And then, a lot of this service is hidden. I mean, there's the service component that you can put on your CV or that you can put on a file, but then there's the hidden service that takes probably more time, than the more visible service. And you still have to figure out, okay, well, how do I still make sure that I'm being productive and doing the things that'll count towards my tenure case? So yeah, it's a very tricky position to navigate for sure.
And what's so interesting, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, is the energy we bring is what the students are craving, but not necessarily what the department wants to break up the what's been historically happening. So the change agent and the expertise that we may bring is what every student wants, and that you get inundated with things you never expected, and having conversations with groups of students that you never expect, and all of a sudden your office hours are longer than you've ever imagined. And it's finding those boundaries for your own sanity so you can recharge and be the person that is actually serving the institution to your best capacity. And there is a pressure, but there's also something transformative when you actually bring in faculty that challenge, that speak truth to power, challenge the status quo, and bring in something fresh that isn't just assumed will go with what has always been done. So I find it invigorating, but I also find it's scary because you don't know how it plays in the end, but you really do have to navigate that because you're not only changing lives, but you're also trying to move yours forward in certain ways. So it's an interesting two-step you're taking at that moment.
And it extends beyond the campus. I mean, I'm sure all of us on this panel, people reach out to us in the communities that we live in somewhat regularly about things that have nothing to do with our campus job, with our jobs as faculty members, as graduate students, as academics on our campuses. There are people in the community who want us to be a part of different boards and be on certain initiatives. They want us to, help connect them to the campus. Like there's all kinds of external things that we are sort of deal with because people go to the website and they see a Black face. And then they're going to reach out to that Black face because it means something different. It means that like, oh, this is an opportunity to connect and be included in a way where when they see a lot of our white colleagues, they don't feel that same way. So again, like that burden is high, to connect it back to Professor Berry's point. It is an opportunity, to do some really cool and transformative things, but it comes at a cost.
All right, and one thing I want to touch on too, you guys definitely brought it up, was, from what I found was this, of the entire nation, 7% of professors at colleges and universities are Black. Of that, 4% are Black women. And so with that, even with me being in grad school, it's very understood that a lot of your credibility as an academic or as an academic scholar are your publications. Do you guys have any experiences with struggles with getting things published or getting certain reviews passed at all?
So for me, as a doc student, a lot of that game is like trying to be on other people's work, right? And trying to get in where you fit in, second author, third author, whatever you need to do in order to get published, with the understanding of it's going to make you both better as a scholar, but also it matters when you're looking for jobs. They're looking to see if you've published, and if you've done any type of scholarly work, can you bring grants to the university, et cetera. And so at this point in my academic career, it's like, all right, let me turn to other things, opportunities, other internships. That's me engaging clinical work and seeing clients this semester, or being on 3 research teams and trying to get published. You've got to make sacrifices in order to publish. And so one of the things that the unique experience of being a Black woman in my program is facing difficulty in being put on projects. So you see your white counterparts being put on projects that have nothing to do with their research agenda, have nothing to do, they're just tied to that professor in that certain way. Favoritism comes up. We see it all the time. And I'm sitting here like, can anybody put me on a paper? Please don't make me ask y'all again. I'll email y'all all at the same time and CC everybody on this email telling you I want to publish. This is what I want to do. And this is how I need to get to where I want to be in this profession. and you're putting up roadblocks, or you're giving me additional hoops, or you're giving me such small parts in the research. Like I'm more than a literature review. I can do more, and I need to advance my research skills further than that. So it has been a struggle, and I'm still in the midst of it. So I'll let you know whenever I get a publication out how that went.
So for the arts, the concept of publication is interesting, especially not from the pure scholar. Like as a practitioner scholar, a lot of my publications come with doing professional work and reporting on that. But a lot of times, what Janelle was saying, the concept of subject matter expertise is held, I think, to a higher standard for Black faculty than it is for our white counterparts in regards to what legitimizes our research in regards to the academy. I haven't run into many roadblocks with that because there are ways to word and advocacy, like there are ways to word and advocate for certain projects. But I do find that there are certain subjects that you are expected to research in ways that white counterparts are not expected to stick to a certain lane in that way. But I have found that you have to do unnecessary advocacy for institutions that may be in the profession, that it seems tedious. And there's just too much justification for the work that you seek to do.
Yeah, I mean, publications are, it's just, you have to deal with a lot of rejection. And I think that's probably the hardest part. It takes a lot of time, and you have to deal with a lot of rejection, very much shots on goal. Typically I would say for my publications, from start to finish, I'd say a year and a half on when I start on the paper to when I start on the project to when it actually comes through in print. About a year and a half. So that takes a lot of patience and perseverance. It takes a lot of, and then, shopping into different journals and dealing with rejection, shopping it at conferences, dealing with hypercriticism. Academics don't always have the most finesse, so often your medicine does not taste very good at all. Maintaining a high level of self-esteem, especially when you're, in spaces where you don't see very many people who look like you too. I think that's the thing that adds to the challenge of publications. But, it's kind of like, like Dr. Davis was saying earlier, there is this competitive element to it where you're really just kind of competing against yourself to make your idea as well refined as it can be. And that's, I think, the kind of thing that can keep you going.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to me, it's one of the best parts of the job. I mean, it's publish or perish. And depending on what university you're at, it's publish or perish. And depending on what kind of department you're in, you have to hit certain tier journals to even be considered for a tenure. And so, I think to me, it's why I go to work, because I like the competitive nature of it. I like, I just like the how can I make this as succinct as possible? How can I make this as convincing an argument as possible? How can I make my methodological approach as rigorous as possible with the data available? And it depends on who you are. It could be like one of your favorite parts of the job. But as an academic, you don't have to take the R1 route, right? You could go to a liberal arts college, you could go to a teaching college, and you can not have to have the pressure of like R1 publications. I went to school with a guy who's a theorist, and his whole goal was to get a job at a small college in a rural area and just like teach in the middle of nowhere, because he wanted to live in the woods or something like that. I mean, so you can take a route you can take a route and apply for jobs. I'm not saying necessarily you can't really like pick your job in academia, but you can take a route where you focus on going to places that don't put the pressure on you to publish. I mean, I think if you want to go the R1 route, you have to kind of want that pressure, because if it's applied upon you and you don't want it, then it's gonna mess up your mind. It's gonna mess up your your mental health. It's gonna make you anxiety and all kinds of stuff. But you got to kind of want this type of pressure to strive to be the R1 university or research one. That's what I mean. R1 is research one.
And it does feel great to see the progression of where you've grown as a researcher and a publisher in the work that you do. Like when I look back at some of my first faculty appointments and the work I submitted for faculty research grants or to be published at conferences or to present at conferences, and now I see where I am now, there is a competitive nature of it that does feel good to say, no, I'm a dialect coach on a network television show. I'm an expert in the field. Like there's something that feels tremendous about that because it is you working against you, and I think you said it absolutely correct, Dr. Davis. Is if it's that publish or perish, but it feels good. It feels good to accomplish that.
It does, because it's so difficult. It's so to get a pub is difficult. You know, even in the journals that aren't like, you know, the premier journals in whatever area you are. And then publishing is going to be different per discipline. And it can even be different within a discipline, how you publish. Like some people, even when like political science, some people in a discipline may need to do a book as opposed to like, you're a theorist, you're going to have to try to like do a book as opposed to somebody that's an Americanist that can do articles. And it just depends on, you know, where you are. Some people do a mix. My dissertation chair does a mix. He writes books, he does articles. You know, it just depends on where you are, what they're gonna want from you. But I mean, it's a part of the job. You can't, like I said, if you come to an R1 school, it's baked in the cake. And you know, you got. I think a lot of that is also good for. And because I went to a state school, I think it's beneficial. I'm talking to brag on Alabama. It's beneficial, I think, when you go to a school that actually makes you work during your degree program. Because I learned to manage my time a lot better at Bama when I was teaching one class a semester and taking classes and taking classes, or teaching one class a semester and doing dissertation work. You know, it kind of trained me, and this is how things go. You know, I teach a class, I prepare for class, I also prepare for my dissertation, I also prepare for my classes, and it kind of gave me, you know, a routine and you know, a way to get the work done.
Yeah, you guys bring us some great points. I remember when I was in grad school and I reached out to the one Black professor in my department, even though she wasn't my advisor, but just to talk to her. And she really did push the publish or perish narrative, because even when we were in grad school, we looked her up, we found her resume, and it was 7 pages long, and 6 of the 7 pages were publications, because she was really gunning for that tenure track. And so I want to touch on that. So becoming tenured. So is there just one track, or how do you actually become tenured as a professor?
It's going to be department and university specific.
Mm-hmm.
When they hire you, they should sit you down and say, look, here are tenure expectations. Different places are going to be more or less specific. Honestly, even before they hire you, if they're even contemplating hiring you, if you're even selected to come out for an interview, they should lay out their tenure expectations for you. So you have an idea coming in, you know, what the expectations will be. Will it be a certain number of articles? Will it be a book? Will it be books plus articles? Will it be articles in certain journals? And then you're reviewed, you know, throughout the process. You know, I get reviewed every year. So I know, you know, where I will always know where I stand with the department or my university. So, you know, there isn't a lot of mystery, because universities have faced lawsuits and all kinds of issues around tenure denials. So there's not a ton of mystery. It really is just like, you know, the expectations are there and you have to meet them. Now there are obstacles that you might, you know, sort of run into, and you have to have a university that's willing to work with you as those kind of obstacles emerge, especially if there are things that are specific to what it means to be a Black faculty on a campus. But, you know, the tenure expectations, you know, from my experience in the places that I've even considered working, have all been relatively clear.
Yeah, likewise. It's really, you understand the expectations once you sign on, university to university. And I also think discipline to discipline, it's vastly different in regards to what constitutes tenurable. Like when we were talking about types of publications, how it varies from discipline to discipline. I know all of us, when we interviewed, we probably had to do a research presentation, and we had to sit down and talk about how we plan to actualize this into a tenure process. You know, they ask you, you get inundated on the front with so many things. There's so many bars to hit that it's a lot of accountability. One of the things about the tenure process is you also have to hold yourself accountable in regards to being regimented in documenting your work, updating your CV, making sure it's in the format. Some universities, I know ours has a specific CV format you have to follow for the tenure and promotion process. And you have to have certain reviewers come to if you're doing a performance, you have to have someone that's in the field that's like looked at as an expert in the field to review your performances. So they let you know the front end, and it's about preparing your strategy as you matriculate through that tenure process to make sure you set yourself up for success.
So one of the things that comes to mind for me, and I'm not working towards tenure yet, not there yet, one day, but one of the things that comes to mind for me, we did a study at our university kind of looking at how Black faculty and staff how Black faculty were being tenured. And we were realizing that Black faculty on average were being tenured after like 6 or 7 years versus white counterparts 4 to 5, 3 to 5. So even that rate was different, right? And so brings up questions of like, why? And the retention of Black faculty is not at the same level either. So like Black faculty will put in time and work at that university and then go somewhere else and get tenured somewhere else. So that was one factor. And then some universities weigh in, or they have the student opinions of instruction weigh in on the tenure process. And I think that puts so many Black faculty, specifically those that have double jeopardy, Black women especially, at a disadvantage, right? Because those, especially for teaching at PWIs, right? Because you have white students who are now evaluating Black faculty members. They could be outright racist, overtly, covertly. You'll never know until you get that feedback after the fact, and it's all anonymous, so people say whatever the heck they want to. And then you have students who have never had a Black faculty member before. They've never been taught by a Black professor. You're their first experience, and so they might say like, oh, she grades too hard, she gave us too much work. And you wouldn't say that about a white faculty member, but you're saying that about me. So I think universities, programs specifically, need to be very intentional in the weight they assign to student opinions of instruction when they're evaluating faculty for tenure.
And once a professor actually becomes tenured, is the pressure to perform still there? Or is it kind of like a safety net as, oh, we're good now?
No, 3 levels. So you want to go all the way up 3 levels. So you start out as an assistant professor. Your first round of tenure, you become an associate professor. Then after that, you go up another to a full professor. And so you want to make it all the way up the ladder. And so you have to keep publishing. Like the first hump is getting tenure as an associate, and then you got to keep going so you can get to that full. So yeah, I don't know. I've never been there, so I don't know how the pressure changes, but I know you still got to publish if you want to accelerate or to continue to climb in the department.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. That's mine.
Well, in my understanding of it too, it doesn't even operate at the same timeline as the promotion from assistant to associate, right? When you're trying to get promoted to an associate professor with tenure, it's typically 6 years. When it comes to taking that next leap from associate to full professor, it could be 6 years, it could be 12 years, it could be 15 years. It really boils down to when the university is ready to promote you. And it actually is a much more even more competitive status to reach than just being a tenured professor. The stakes are not as high because tenure means job for life. But in terms of just like the professional benefits and just the signal that it sends of being a full professor, the prestige that comes along with that, it's guarded. So there's still this pressure to continue to work for the folks who really want the full professor level. There's still a lot of pressure to continue to work even after tenure.
Yeah. So outside of reviews, how do campuses actually support those on the tenure track? Especially as we said before, what Janelle brought up, how your white counterparts are being promoted to tenure well before the Black staff faculty members. How are they actually supporting and advocating for their Black staff members to become tenured to get that promotion?
Well, I would say that, so the game is super majority white. So if you're doing race work, it's just going to be harder to get it published because your reviewers are more likely to be white people. So it's a lot easier for them publishing things that aren't race sensitive to get the publications out the way. And to be honest about it, some of them work in conjunction with each other, right? And so my advisor used to tell me about publishing cartels, is what he calls them. And it's groups of people that work around the same thing. They pass their papers around to each other. Then they submit and put each other down as reviewer. And so they're way more likely to get publications because they're sharing work and they're putting each other down for reviewers and things like that. And so, they're working in those cartels. I remember that this is not something that just happens when they become faculty. I remember when I was at Bama, some white guys told me that they had a Dropbox with all the comp questions and answers that they ever been given for the last 6 or 7 years or something. Right. And they said, oh, we're going to give you access to it or whatever. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And you think they gave me access to it? No. I would have refused it anyway, but they didn't give me access to it. So all them guys that's come through there have been cheating. Right. And so why wouldn't they do that once they get to, in the profession? Because that's how they been doing it, to get through. And so, I mean, I think that is a part of like how they get tenure. Could be probability speaking, how they get tenure before in those early years. What I did when I came to Kansas is that I went to the orientation and I went and found the resources on campus. I went and found the research institutes that help you with grants. I went and found the places that help you with getting student workers and graduate workers, all that type of stuff. I tried to find out the resources on campus. And most of the time, R1 universities, they want you to publish. They want you to get grants. They want you to do these things because it brings money and notoriety to them. So usually they'll have some built-in support systems within the university that you can access. And I think finding those and accessing those are important. I think, I've been here, this is my second year here, and I'm working with this research foundation on the campus, and I'm working on 3 grants with them. And so and I don't have to do, all I have to do is write the proposal. They do the submission, they do the budgeting, they do the budget justifications, they do all of that stuff for me. All I'm doing is write a proposal.
Yeah,
You have to do a lot of advocating for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you also, I find it really helpful to find faculty mentors that have either our full professors, maybe even our chairs that you can also seek to advocate and be on your tenure review committee. Finding a good committee, an external review committee in regards to that process can really help in advocating for that. And also, like what we were saying before, these cartels, but also they also are often the board members and the presidents of the organizations that provide the platforms for people to present at conferences. And so it's a cyclical kind of relationship where what the university deems as like an accrediting bureau is also the same person you're going to lunch with. But there, it's not necessarily the level of expertise that happens, but it's more the personal relationship that happens in regards to that process. And so finding networks that maybe publish Black work, for us, being the president of the Black Theater Network, working towards making sure all of our submissions are peer and jury reviewed, elevated, making sure that we elevate Black scholars in a way that other organizations don't, finding that kind of advocacy process, and then advocating per campus that these organizations be looked at in the field and be held in the tenure and promotion process equally as like other white organizations and networks. Also help in the promotion process. We have a professor emeritus from University of North Carolina coming to review our tenure and promotion documents with our dean to just talk about how they may be biased. There may be implicit biases built into the tenure and promotion process. And in this process, make sure that there is that advocacy for the work that black faculty do on campus. I found a great faculty mentor who I cycle with, and he can provide guidance in these processes to make sure you don't step on landmines in the process. And some of these are really easy to step on in regards to the publishing process, the tenure and promotion process, just the navigating of the resources in the university process. And it's not necessarily being super political, but just understanding how to navigate these systems.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that universities can do is to just give you time and just give you, and really just kind of leave you alone. And that's all we're really kind of looking for is the freedom and time to just kind of be left alone to our own devices and really do our work. And that's the unfortunate truth about it, is that, you know, if a university really wants to support Black faculty members, they give us opportunities to do that. So whether it's, buying out a course or some of the courses that we'll have to teach, whether that's giving us year-long fellowships to where we can be away from the campus and write, whether that's additional summer support so that we can focus on writing. You know, one of the hardest parts, I think, for me was in graduate school, adjusting to the isolation of it. You're at your best in academia when you're by yourself. When I could lock myself in a room and just work and work and work for hours, ignore my phone, ignore emails on my computer, and really just like hyper focus on what I'm trying to do. That's not really how I was built. I'm a very social person, but that's the nature of the job, to be really, really good at it. So what can universities do? When people love, when they see the Black faculty member, they want to come in and say hi and do all the water cooler talk. They want to talk, whether it's sports or culture, media, and all this other stuff. And what you really need is time to be left alone and do your work. So that's the biggest thing that, at least from what I've experienced, that universities can do.
And actually, thank you, Dr. Collins. You started my final piece. So if you were in a place to be in front of your department, your president, outside of them, asking you to participate in, DIE, diversity and inclusion initiatives, which I'm sure you guys are being asked to do constantly now as faculty members. If you were to able to sit in front of them and say, this is what I need to be more successful in my position, for me to get where I need to be, what would you say that you would need from your campus, your department, and the environment around you to perform at your best?
I think that timepiece is correct. I mean, I think, having course buyouts, so you can get more work done is key. In the first 3 to 4 years, having those course buyouts, is key. I would also say, the director of our school was really good to me, because she told me I didn't have to be on any external committees. So she put me on one internal committee, like the whatever, and then she didn't obligate me to be on any other external committees, no dissertation committees, no thesis committees. She said, if you don't want to do it, just tell them I said you can't do it. And so that gives me a way not to get sucked into things immediately. Because, I've only been here be here for a year, not to get sucked into any things immediately. I also think, just an aside, is that you got to be aware of office politics. Right? So as you're not tenured faculty, you need to be aware of not rubbing people the wrong way or getting involved in fights that don't concern you, or getting involved in spats that don't concern you. Because you could go to an apartment and it could be beef from these people who've been there 15 years. Right? And you might side on, what I'm saying? You don't know where these allegiances lie. So I would be cautious about, jumping too far out there, because, you don't want to rub people the wrong way. And when it comes up for tenure review, they're like, well, I don't think that person's a good fit for the department. I don't think their attitude or how they, is not a good fit. So you got to be cautious about this. I guess as me as a political scientist, that the office politics matters, right? So you have to be very diplomatic in how you're dealing with your new department.
I would ask them to resource and not ask Black faculty to have to justify the relevancy of what they're doing in the way, and scrutinize it in the way that they don't white faculty. Just if you believe in the faculty, resource them appropriately.
I would say that, so part of my research is about mentorship of junior faculty. So literally the conversation we're having right now, who's having those conversations with junior faculty, right? Not all of us have been put up on game. Not everybody knows the political context of the department, right? So mentorship is a huge part of that, and creating intentional mentor programs that are gonna discuss these things with junior faculty, super important. And I will also add, again, from the perspective of a doc student, universities have to pour into Black doctoral students. period, right? Because there's no reason why so many of us should be burnt out before we even get fully into the academy. Half of our foot is in the doorway, and a lot of people are turning outside of that doorway saying, no, thank you, this is not for me, or this is too difficult, there's too many hoops to jump through. So universities being very intentional about the experiences that their doctoral students, their Black doc students are having. That also goes into funding. I know you guys were talking about buying out a course. It's important to have assistantships. It's also important for us to have time for our research too, and to do whatever we're trying to do in order to, again, further put our foot into the academy. So figuring out ways to also fund Black doc students is super important.
All right, thank you guys. Are there any questions from the viewers at all? If not, you just put it in the chat. Now we can roll on out. No.
This is Vanessa. I don't necessarily have questions. I just have more so of a comment for you all. I thank you all so much for taking the time to just share your experiences, because you all touched on so many things, and I mean, I didn't know what to expect, and so it's one of those sort of situations where I came in not knowing what to expect, but then I was like, okay, I needed just this. Being a person that has had both the PWI and the HBCU experience, you all touched on so many things, from, you know, representation to the politics of getting published. I just solely wish that I would have had this sort of talk available to me when I was a doctoral student. I'm currently serving as a staff at a major university here in Houston. And so part of me feels as though, like, dang, why did I get this information so late? But at the same time, I'm so glad that I've gotten it now as opposed to even later. So thank you to you all. I would definitely say that more talks like this are needed, and just keep it up.
Thank you. Anyone else?
If I could say a little bit about that transition though, from an HBCU. I'm a graduate of Morehouse College in Atlanta. And I definitely think that HBCU experience has been one of the main pieces that propelled me to be able to just kind of withstand a lot of the things that come along with being Black in the academy, for sure. I just think, again, the isolation, and you really are left to rely on your self-confidence and your vision for really what you want your research, you know, portfolio to be. Like the ideas that you are really spending every day, you know, mining, you really have to cling to that. And, you know, I just think the HBCU experience is just really always about finding ways to make society better, really about uplifting and empowering people, and, you know, and really being able to walk around with the understanding that you're built for whatever is going to come your way. So, so Vanessa and just anybody else who, you know, has the HBCU experience, I want you to understand that you have an advantage when it comes to navigating these kinds of institutions. At least I feel like I do. I
agree with you 100% as a HBCU grad too. The culture of service that happens at HBCUs, I think, really prepares you. So yeah, I echo that 100%.
Thank you. Anyone else have any final thoughts? Panel included.
Thank you for having us. For sure, this was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you. That was a little quick turnover, but thank you. All right, can you guys let the viewers know how they can reach you if they have any other questions outside of this?
Easiest way to reach me is on Instagram, Chris _Berry. I check that, you know, the email gets flooded. So Chris _Berry, so CHRIS _BERRY. Any questions, I will answer anything about this process, because there's so many things I wish I knew when I first got into academia that I would love to make sure no one hits those speed bumps as well.
Thank you.
I'm putting my email in the chat right now, and I'll actually be reaching out to everyone else on this panel, because again, still not there in academia fully. So I'll be continuing the conversation with y'all later. Thank you.
Yeah, via email, Jonathan_Collins@brown.edu, at Prof. John Collins on Twitter. my website, jonathanecollins.com.
Probably just email Davis_Brandon@ku.edu. And also, you can just probably email me. That'd probably be the best way.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. This recording will be out, I'm not gonna lie, probably Monday. The next one will be October 9th, I think. It will be a conversation with myself and my therapist discussing the importance of therapy and acknowledgement of traumas in the Black community. So that would be, I believe, October 9th, so next month. Yeah, I think, do you guys have anything to promote before we go out?
I have a podcast called The Good Man Podcast.
Hey.
So you can find us on Apple Podcast, Good Man Podcast. You can check out Black Theater Network at Black Theater Network, that's theater with an RE.org. And you can also check out the work at the Billie Holiday Theater, thebillie.org.
Thank you. Anybody?
I'm doing a set of seminars on police reform. So if you're interested in police reform, it's run through the policy school at Pitt. You can, it's listed on my Twitter. So you go to my Twitter, it's just Brandon R. Davis and the number 3. And it's in there somewhere. It's probably pinned to the top, but I'm going to talk to a lot of different people about different aspects of police reform. And also coming up pretty soon is going to be another one where we have a discussion with the mayor of Pittsburgh and the mayor's staff about police reform in Pittsburgh.
Dope. All right, we're good. Everybody's good. Well, thank you guys for joining. This will be out, like I said, Monday. Have a good night. Thank you.